The silent attack, the hospital ship Mercy Dawn drifted through the quiet dark of space. Its white hull carried the red cross of peace, glowing bright against the endless stars. Inside, doctors moved from bed to bed, checking wounded soldiers and sick children. Nurses whispered to calm the scared. The ship was not a weapon, not a fighter, only a place of healing. Everyone believed it was safe. Draven sat in his corner of the engineering bay, fixing a broken scanner. He was not a soldier. He was a quiet man, a genius with machines. While others saved lives with medicine, he saved them with tools. He knew every wire, every bolt of the Mercy Dawn. It was his home, his place of work, his proof that even in war, humans still carried hope. Then, without warning, the alarms screamed. Red lights flashed across the corridors. Nurses froze. Doctors dropped their instruments. Draven's scanner fell from his hands and clattered to the floor. He stared at the warning screen. It showed movement in space shadows sliding out from behind an asteroid field. Enemy ships. No, a nurse whispered. They can't. Not a hospital ship. But the shadows came closer. Alien warships, dark and sharp like knives, surrounded. The Mercy Dawn, their weapons powered up, glowing a sickly green. The captain of the hospital ship sent out a desperate call. We are a hospital vessel. We are unarmed. This is sacred ground. Do not attack. For a moment, silence filled the space. Maybe they would listen. Maybe they would honor the old laws. Then the first shot fired. It struck the starboard side, tearing open a section of the hull. Air and screams rushed into the void. Sirens wailed louder. Patients screamed. Metal groaned like an injured beast. Draven stumbled, holding onto the wall. His chest pounded with rage and fear. He saw flames burst in the corridor, saw nurses trying to shield children with their bodies. The hospital ship was being torn apart, and no help was coming. The aliens fired again. Another explosion ripped through the medical bay. Beds and equipment flew into the darkness. The sound of breaking steel and human cries mixed together. Draven ran to the main viewport. He pressed his hand against the glass. Outside, he saw their attackers' sleek alien destroyers, painted black with symbols of conquest. They circled the Mercy Dawn like wolves around a dying prey. The captain shouted over the speakers, "All hands, evacuate who you can. Save the wounded first." Escape pods launched, one after another, but the aliens targeted them. Small fireballs blossomed across the stars as pod after pod was destroyed. There was no mercy, no law, no respect. Draven felt something break inside him. This was not war. This was slaughter. He thought of the children in the ward, of the doctors who never held weapons, of the sacred oath the ship carried. The Mercy Dawn was more than a vessel. It was a promise that even in bloodshed, humanity still cared. Now that promise was burning. Another blast shook the ship. Draven fell hard, blood running from his forehead. Smoke filled the corridor. He crawled, coughing, until he reached the engineering room. Sparks rained down from broken wires. Panels exploded one by one. The ship's heart was dying. He sat against the wall, chest heaving. Around him, the screams grew faint. The ship was breaking apart, piece by piece, drifting into the endless black. His hands trembled, but his mind was sharp. He remembered every face he had seen today, the child who smiled when given a toy, the old soldier who thanked the nurse for kindness, the doctor who swore to save one more life before resting. Gone. All gone. Draven felt hot tears sting his eyes. But in that moment of despair, something else began to grow inside him. Not fear, not grief, something colder, harder. Rage. He pressed his hand against the broken console and whispered to the ship, "I swear, they will pay. The aliens didn't hear his words. They didn't care. They fired one last time, a killing blow. The Mercy. Dawn split in half, fire bursting from its core. The wreck spun into the void, silent at last. But one man survived. One mind sharper than any blade. One human genius who would never forget as the enemy ships drifted away, laughing in their alien tongues. They believed they had silenced the humans. They believed no one would rise. They were wrong. In the smoke and ruin, among the broken steel and blood, Draven crawled from the wreckage. His body was weak, but his mind was alive. He looked at the burning stars and made his vow again. The galaxy would remember this day, not as the day a hospital ship died, but as the day a human genius awakened. The genius awakens. The wreckage of the Mercy Dawn floated in silence. Shattered hull plates turned slowly in the void, catching faint light from Zephyr, a nearby star. The hospital ship was gone, burned, broken, dead. But inside one ruined section, a single figure moved. Draven. He dragged himself across the deck, coughing smoke from his lungs. His body ached, his clothes torn, blood streaked across his face. Every breath felt heavy, but his mind refused to stop. He had survived when so many had not. The weight of that truth pressed down harder than the pain. He stumbled into what remained of the engineering bay. Fires still burned. Panels sparked. The machines he once cared for were now nothing but twisted metal. But even here, in the ruins, he saw tools. He saw parts. He saw possibility. Draven sat on the floor, back against the wall, staring at the cracked ceiling. His mind replayed the attack, those alien destroyers circling like vultures, the screams of children, the helpless calls for peace. He closed his eyes, but the images stayed. Never again, he whispered. Something shifted inside him. Before, he had been a builder of healing devices, a quiet man who fixed what was broken. But now his purpose was different. His mind sharpened. His heart hardened. He was no longer just an engineer. He was vengeance waiting to be shaped. He pushed himself up and searched the bay. Among the wreckage, he found the medical equipment, surgical lasers, plasma scalpels, tissue sealers. These were tools of life. But in his hands, they could become something else. He worked with trembling hands, but clear thought. He adjusted the energy regulators on a surgical laser, increasing his output. He added cooling coils from the ships. Broken reactor, forcing the beam to stay stable. When he tested it against a metal panel, the beam cut straight through. The steel glowed red, then fell apart like butter under a knife. Draven stared at it, chest heaving. This was no longer a surgeon's tool. It was a weapon. He whispered to himself, "You thought you destroyed us. You thought wrong." For hours, maybe days, he couldn't tell. He worked without rest. He pulled wires, cannibalized machines, rewired circuits. His genius burned brighter than his exhaustion. Every new creation carried one purpose: to turn healing into destruction. Meanwhile, humanity learned what had happened. Across the colonies and stations, the news spread: the Mercy Dawn, a hospital ship, destroyed with all aboard. Images of the wreckage flashed on screens. Alien propaganda mocked the humans, showing the destruction as proof of their superiority. Billions of humans watched in silence. Some wept, some cursed, but in every heart, anger grew. And in one hidden corner of space, Draven was giving that anger a voice. He rebuilt a small shuttle from the wreckage, outfitting it with his new weapons. When the shuttle powered up, its hull patched with scars, its engines coughing smoke, Draven climbed. Inside, his eyes burned with fire. "This is for them," he said, thinking of the nurses, the children, the doctors who had trusted peace. He tested his first prototype weapon on a drifting asteroid. The beam struck, slicing the rock into two clean halves. Dust spread like smoke across the void. Draven's lips curled into a grim smile. It worked, but one weapon was not enough. He needed more. He needed better. He needed something that would shake the galaxy to its core. He began designing a new power system, combining alien energy cells scavenged from destroyed ships with human stabilizers. The result was unstable, dangerous, but powerful. A single shot from such a weapon could rip apart a destroyer. His hands shook as he worked, but his mind saw the path clearly. Every calculation, every sketch, every adjustment moved him closer to vengeance. As he worked, he remembered the captain's last words, "Save the wounded first." Draven whispered back into the silence, "I will." By ending the ones who made them. Bleed. The first ship he built was small, rough, almost ugly. But when he flew it into space, it carried more firepower than anything its size should have. He tested it on the wreckage of an alien drone that had been left behind. One strike from his new weapon, and the drone exploded into 1,000 pieces. Draven's heart pounded. He could see it now. This was only the beginning. He looked at the stars, his jaw tight. The empire that had dared to touch a human hospital. Ship thought the battle was over. They thought the humans would stay broken, that they had forgotten one thing. Humans had a way of turning pain into strength. And Draven, the quiet engineer, was about to turn one act of cruelty into the birth of humanity's deadliest weapons. The galaxy would never be the same. Whispers of revenge word of the Mercy Dawn's destruction spread like fire across human space. It was not just a loss. It was an insult, a wound carved deep into humanity's soul. Hospital ships had always been untouchable, protected by ancient laws of war. But now, those laws were broken. On every colony, people whispered the same words. If they can strike our healers, nothing is safe. Fear grew, but so did anger. Yet, while human leaders debated how to respond, one man was already moving Drave inside his hidden workshop built from scavenged wreckage and the bones of forgotten ships. He worked without sleep. The quiet engineer had become something new. His hands were blistered, his eyes red, but his mind burned like a furnace. Every design he created was sharper, deadlier than the last. He no longer built tools for healing. He built weapons of fear, Draven's first real creation was a warship born from a human freighter's frame. He stripped its cargo holds, reinforced the hull, and armed it with weapons that no one had ever seen before. Surgical lasers had become precision cannons. Plasma scalpels had become beams that could melt warship armor. Medical drones were reprogrammed into attack swarms, each carrying charges strong enough to cut a hole through steel. When he was finished, the ship looked ugly patched metal, mismatched parts, but it pulsed with power. He named it Revenant. A ghost, born from the dead. Far away, in the alien empire, the victory over the Mercy Dawn was celebrated. Commanders laughed, showing recordings of burning wreckage as proof of their dominance. To them, it was a small thing, a hospital ship, weak and defenseless. Nothing more than a message to remind humanity of its place. But even in their victory, whispers reached them. Whispers of something dangerous. A patrol ship had been destroyed near the border, cut clean in half. No survivors. Another station reported strange beams slicing through their armor as if it were paper. Survivors spoke of a human ship unlike any they had seen before, small, patched together, but carrying the fire of 100 cannons. At first, the alien high command dismissed the reports. They called them lies, tricks, exaggerations, but the whispers grew louder. Back in human space, Draven stood before a council of commanders. They had summoned him after hearing rumors of his work. At first, they doubted. He was only an engineer, after all, not a soldier, not a general. But when he showed them the Revenant, When he fired its weapons in a demonstration, their doubt turned into silence. The beams cut through armored targets as if they were paper. The drones swarmed, detonating with precision. What Draven had built was not a simple warship. It was a message carved into steel and fire. Humanity will not bow. One admiral leaned forward, voice heavy. These weapons, they are too brutal. They cross lines even we have never crossed. Draven's eyes burned. And what lines did the enemy cross when they slaughtered the Mercy Dawn? When they killed children in cold blood? If we do not, answer, we invite them to do it again. The council argued, voices rising. Some feared the galaxy would see humanity as monsters. Others said humanity had no choice. In the end, they gave Draven permission. Quiet permission. Officially, his ship did not exist. Officially, humanity was still debating. But in the shadows, Revenant was unleashed. The first strike came at night, or what passed for night on the colony world of Harkon. An alien garrison there had been celebrating, drinking, and laughing about the destruction of the hospital ship. Then, the sky tore open. The Revenant descended, its patched hull glowing with energy. The soldiers aimed their cannons upward, but their shots bounced off reinforced plating. Draven fired his beams, and the garrison walls melted in seconds. The laughter stopped. The celebration turned to screams. By dawn, the garrison was nothing but ash and ruin. On its walls, burned into stone, was a message left by Draven's drones. For the Mercy Dawn, the whispers grew into fear. The alien empire could not deny it anymore. Something was hunting them. Something human. Their commanders demanded answers. Who is this man? What is this ship? How do we stop him? But every time they sent fleets, Revenant disappeared into the shadows. Every time they set traps, it slipped away. And every time they thought they were safe, another outpost, another convoy, another stronghold burned. Draven had become a ghost, a whisper, a storm in the dark, and the galaxy began to realize the truth. This was not just about a hospital ship. This was about revenge. This was about a human genius who would not stop until the Empire itself trembled. The Empire shakes. The alien Empire had laughed when the Mercy Dawn was destroyed. They had mocked humans, saying, "See how fragile they are. Even their healers burn like dry grass." But now the laughter was gone. Whispers of the Revenant spread across their fleets like poison. A single patched warship, commanded by one furious human genius, was tearing holes in their proud empire. Patrol ships failed to return. Convoys were destroyed without warning. Outposts that had stood for decades were nothing but ruins, burned with strange weapons no alien could explain. Survivors spoke of beams that melted armor and drones that struck like swarms of angry hornets. A name carried across every channel, from frightened soldiers to high lords in the Empire's court: Revenant. One alien commander sat in his warship's chair, his claws tapping against the armrest. Reports filled the air. Another border station gone. Another convoy vanished. He slammed his fist down, shattering the metal beneath. "This is one ship," he roared. "One human ship. And you tell me we cannot catch it?" But his officers only lowered their heads. The Revenant did not fight like a normal warship. It appeared from nowhere, struck like lightning, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. It was as if the humans had birthed a phantom into the void. Meanwhile, on the Revenant, Draven stood at the command console. His eyes were dark from sleepless nights, but his mind was sharp. Every calculation, every strike, every escape route was his design. He watched as his drones returned from a raid, their metallic shells dripping with ash from a destroyed alien depot. On the screen, the wreckage burned, sending signals of distress. He leaned forward, his voice calm. Let them scream. Let them call for help. By the time their fleets arrive, we will already be gone. His crew volunteers who had joined him, after hearing of the Mercy Dawn, looked at him with a mix of fear and respect. They knew they were following a man who was no longer just human. He was a storm wrapped in flesh, a genius who turned pain into fire. The alien empire finally reacted. They sent a full fleet, 20 warships, to corner the Revenant. The trap was set in the Arkan Belt, a narrow region of asteroid fields and gas clouds. When Draven entered the belt, the alien fleet closed in. Warships on all sides, weapons glowing, ready to end the Phantom. "Revenant, you are surrounded," their commander's voice boomed. "Power down, surrender, or be destroyed." Draven only smiled. "You think I came here blind? You think I did not see your trap?" The alien commander's voice faltered. "What do you mean?" The answer came in fire. Draven had already filled the asteroid belt with hidden charges, modified mining explosives, linked to his drones. As the alien fleet moved into position, the asteroids lit up. Explosions tore through the field. Huge rocks shattered, slamming into warships, crushing them under waves of fire and stone. Then the Revenant struck. Its beams cut through halls, slicing destroyers in half. Drones swarmed, planting bombs on engines and reactors. In moments, chaos consumed the fleet. One alien officer screamed, "It's not possible." No human could do this. But Draven's voice echoed through their comms, cold and sharp. "This is the price of your mercy." Within an hour, the proud fleet of 20 ships was reduced to wreckage. Flames drifted in the silence of space. Only a handful of survivors managed to flee. Back in the Empire's capital, the High Lords trembled as the news arrived. Their fleets, their pride, their power, it was all failing against one man. "Who is this human?" One lord whispered, another hissed. "Not a soldier, not a general, an engineer, a genius." The Emperor's claws curled around his throne. His eyes burned with fury. "Then this genius will die. I will see his ashes scattered across the void." But deep inside, even the Emperor felt it, the first flicker of fear. Draven, standing aboard the Revenant, stared out at the stars. His face was calm, but his eyes glowed with fire. The aliens were beginning to understand. Their empire, built on arrogance and cruelty, was shaking, and he was not finished. "Prepare the next strike," he told his crew. "We've shown them fear. Now we will show them fire." The galaxy trembled, waiting for his next move. Fire across the stars. The Arkan Belt battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. An entire alien fleet, destroyed by one human ship. The empire that once laughed at humanity was now silent. For the first time in centuries, they felt fear. Every border, world trembled. Every commander asked the same question. If one human ship can do this, what happens if more appear? But the truth was worse than they imagined, because Draven was not slowing down. He was only beginning. The Revenant darted through space like a shadow, its patched hull glowing with energy from weapons never seen before. Draven no longer chose small targets. He went after fuel depots, shipyards, and supply chains. Wherever he struck, fire followed. On the mining world of Zorath, alien overseers forced slaves to dig deep into the crust. They believed themselves untouchable. But when the Revenant appeared in the sky, its beams slicing through the mining towers, the overseers screamed. The slaves watched in awe as the very chains that bound them melted away. For the first time in their lives, they saw an alien fortress burn, and it was a human who lit the fire. Draven left a message carved into the ruins. For the Mercy gone, the Empire tried to respond with bigger fleets. 50 ships here, 100 there. But Draven was always ahead. His genius saw every trap before it was set. His drones spread false signals, leading fleets into ambushes. His modified weapons struck from impossible ranges. One by one, mighty armadas were reduced to drifting wreckage. Stars that once glowed peacefully now burned red with the fires of war. Alien citizens began to whisper in fear. They no longer called humans weak. They no longer mocked their mercy. They asked the question their leaders could not answer. If one man can do this, what if all of humanity follows him? On the Revenant, Draven stood before his crew. They were tired, scarred, but loyal. Each had lost someone on the Mercy Dawn or in the Empire's long wars. Now they fought not just for revenge, but for survival, for justice, for the right to exist without fear. Draven looked at them, his voice steady but sharp. They thought mercy made us weak. They thought peace made us soft. But today, we show them the truth. We are not weak. We are not broken. We are fire, and we will burn away their empire. His words lit a spark in their hearts. The crew cheered, their voices echoing through the metal halls. For the first time since the Mercy Dawn, they felt strong. The next strike shook the Empire to its core. Draven targeted a grand shipyard where the aliens built their largest battleships. It was defended by a fortress, dozens of cannons, and an entire fleet. No one believed any human would dare, but Draven did not wait for belief. He waited for opportunity. Using stolen codes and cloaked drones, he slipped the Revenant into the heart of the shipyard. When the alien fleet finally realized, it was too late. Explosions tore through the docks. Half-finished battleships collapsed in flames. Workers screamed as fire consumed the fortress walls. The alien fleet scrambled to respond, but every time they turned their guns, the Revenant had already moved. When the battle ended, nothing remained but twisted steel and drifting ash. The Empire had lost years of work in a single night. The High Lords called it impossible. The soldiers called it a nightmare. But the galaxy gave it another name, vengeance. Meanwhile, humanity rallied. Colonies that once argued over defense now united. Soldiers, engineers, even ordinary miners offered their service. They wanted to join the fire. They wanted to stand with Draven. The council debated in secret. Some feared Draven was too dangerous, that his weapons were beyond control. But the people didn't care. To them, he was a hero, a symbol, proof that humanity could not be broken. Draven's name carried like thunder across the stars dot in the alien empire. The Emperor finally saw the truth. His claws dug into his throne as he stared at the reports. Whole fleets gone, worlds burning, shipyards destroyed. His empire, once unshakable, was cracking. Enough, he growled. This human thinks himself unstoppable. Then I will crush him with everything we have. He ordered the gathering of the Grand Armada, the largest fleet in the empires. History. Thousands of ships bound together for one purpose, to hunt and destroy the Revenant. The galaxy held its breath. On the Revenant, Draven watched the stars flicker on his maps. He knew the Empire was preparing something massive, but he was ready. They want to bring their fire, he whispered, and let them burn. His eyes glowed with fury. His mind spun with plans. The war was no longer one ship against an empire. It was a fire spreading across the stars, and Draven was the spark. The final gambit, the alien emperor had gathered his might. From every corner of his empire, warships were pulled into one place. Thousands of vessels, destroyers, carriers, dreadnoughts, and armada so large could block out the stars. Their goal was simple: to destroy Revenant and the human genius who commanded it. The galaxy trembled at the sight. Never before had so much power been gathered in one fleet. To the aliens, this was the end of their fear. To humanity, it was the greatest threat they had ever faced. But to Draven, it was an opportunity. On the Revenant, Draven stood before his crew. The maps glowed around him, showing the massive alien fleet like a wall of fire stretching across the stars. His crew looked nervous. Some whispered that even Draven could not face such power. Draven's voice cut through the silence. They believe numbers will save them. They believe size will crush us. But I tell you this, no matter how many ships they bring, they are still blind. They do not see what I see. They do not think as we think. They will not survive this day. His words burned in their hearts. Fear turned into resolve. The crew nodded, ready to follow him into the storm. Draven's plan was madness. Only a genius could shape. He would not fight the Armada head-on. That would be suicide. Instead, he would use the very size of the fleet against them. He sent drones ahead, cloaked in silence, scattering through the system where the Armada gathered. It planted charges on asteroids, mining stations, and even abandoned satellites. Each was linked, waiting for Draven's command. At the same time, he prepared the Revenant's ultimate weapon, built from salvaged alien technology fused with the remains of the Mercy Dawn's core reactor. It was unstable, dangerous, and powerful beyond measure. One shot could destroy a city, or it could tear a fleet apart. His crew looked at the weapon with awe and fear. Will it hold together? One asked. Draven's answer was cold. It doesn't need to hold forever, just long enough. The day came. The alien armada spread across the system, their ships glowing with energy, their weapons primed. The Emperor himself watched from his flagship, surrounded by his strongest guards. All ships advance, he commanded. End this phantom. The Revenant appeared at the edge of the system, a small scarred vessel against an ocean of steel. To the aliens, it looked laughable. One ship against thousands. A mouse against a storm. The order came. Fire. 1,000. Beams of energy lit up the void, racing toward the Revenant. But Draven was already moving. Now, he whispered. His drones activated. The hidden charges exploded across the system. Asteroids shattered into giant fragments, smashing into warships. Mining stations collapsed, their reactors detonating in massive bursts of fire. The alien fleet broke formation, chaos spreading as ships collided, crashed, and burned. But Draven was not finished. He aimed the ultimate weapon. The unstable reactor hummed, its glow turning the ship's hulls red. His crew braced, fear in their eyes, but Draven's hands were steady. Fire. The beam erupted, brighter than a sun. It tore through the center of the alien fleet, ripping dreadnoughts apart as if they were paper. Whole squadrons vanished in the blaze. The explosion shook the system, sending shockwaves across the stars. On the Emperor's flagship, alarms screamed. Officers shouted in panic as half the fleet was wiped out in seconds. The Emperor's claws tightened on his throne, rage boiling. This human, this engineer, he snarled. How can one man do this? But even he felt the truth in his bones. The Empire was crumbling. On the Revenant, sparks rained down. The ultimate weapon had pushed the ship to its limits. Panels cracked, engines burned. The hull screamed under the strain, but Draven's eyes never wavered. He looked at the wreckage outside, at the broken armada, and he knew this was the moment he had waited for since the Mercy Dawn. Finish it, he told his crew. The Revenant dove into the chaos, striking crippled ships, cutting down survivors with precision. Drones swarmed, planting explosives on the Emperor's guards. The alien fleet that had been called unstoppable was now burning across the stars. When it was done, silence fell. The once mighty armada was gone. The Emperor's flagship limped away, humiliated, broken. What had been the pride of an empire was now only ash and wreckage. Draven stood at the viewport, his face pale, but his eyes hard. He had gambled everything, his ship, his life, his crew, and he had won. The galaxy had witnessed it. One human genius had shattered the greatest fleet in history. But deep inside, Draven knew the war was not yet finished. The Empire was wounded. Yes, but not destroyed. That final task still waited. He whispered into the stars, his voice like a blade. They thought mercy made us weak. Now they will learn what vengeance makes us. Empire in ashes, the stars still burned with the wreckage of the Great Armada. Twisted alien hulls drifted silently, their fires fading into cold ash. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible. One human ship, one human genius, had shattered the pride of an empire. But Draven was not finished. The Revenant limped through the void, its hull scarred, its engines barely alive. Sparks flickered in the corridors, and the crew moved with exhaustion in their eyes. Yet none of them spoke of retreat. They had followed Draven this far, and they would follow him until the end. Draven stood at the cracked viewport, staring at the stars. His body was weary, but his mind blazed like fire. He had broken fleets, burned worlds, and crushed armies. Now only one thing remained, the Empire's heart, the capital world. The alien emperor sat upon his throne, his claws twitching, his eyes filled with rage and fear. Reports flooded in shipyards gone, colonies burned, fleets destroyed. His empire, once untouchable, was falling apart. "Summon what remains," he growled. "Every ship, every soldier. We will defend the capital to the last." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. His people whispered behind closed doors. They no longer called humans weak. They no longer called the Emperor strong. They whispered another name, one that carried across the stars. Draven. The Emperor's grip on power was slipping, and fear was stronger than loyalty. When the Revenant arrived at the edge of the capital system, defenders filled the sky, hundreds of warships, defense platforms, orbital cannons. It was a wall of steel, built to protect the throne. Draven studied the screen, his jaw tight. He knew this would be the hardest fight of all. But he also knew there was no turning back. He turned to his crew, his voice calm and steady. They slaughtered healers. They murdered children. They believed mercy was weakness. Today, we end that lie. Today, we end them. His words struck like fire in their hearts. The crew shouted back, their voices won. They were ready. The battle began. The alien defenders fired first, beams and missiles streaking through the void. The Revenant twisted between them, its patched engines screaming but holding. Draven's weapons roared in answer beams, slicing through cruisers, drones swarming across carriers. Explosions lit the sky like a storm of fire. For every ship the Revenant destroyed, 3 more closed in. The crew fought desperately, hands flying across controls, sweat pouring down their faces. But Draven was calm. Every move he made, every strike he ordered, felt like part of a plan only he could see. He had turned chaos into his battlefield. At last, the Revenant broke through. Ahead lay the capital world vast, shining, proud. Towers of alien stone rose into the sky, symbols of their empire's might. Draven's eyes narrowed. Bring the weapon online. The unstable core hummed, glowing brighter than ever before. It was dangerous, more unstable than when they had fired it against the Armada. The crew hesitated, fear in their eyes. If we fire this close, one whispered, we may not survive. Draven's voice was quiet, but sharp. Survival was never promised. Justice was. He pressed the command. The weapon fired. The beam struck the capital's defense grid, tearing through shields, burning holes in the sky. Towers crumbled. Warships exploded. The capital shook as fire spread across its surface. The Emperor watched from his throne, his mouth open in horror. His guards fled, his court screamed, and for the first time in his reign, he knew what it felt like to be powerless. He whispered, almost to himself, What have we unleashed? But no one answered. His empire was dying. On the Revenant, the ship shuddered violently. Panels cracked. Alarms screamed. The unstable core was tearing itself apart. Draven stood at the console, his hands steady even as the ship fell to pieces. His crew looked to him, fear mixing with pride. They knew they might not live to see another sunrise, but they had already won. The Empire was burning. When the fires finally died, the galaxy was changed forever. The alien empire, once the greatest power in the stars, lay broken. Its fleets destroyed, its capital in ruins, its emperor fled into the shadows. And through it all, one name remained .ERAV, Enoch the human genius. A phantom of vengeance. The man who turned grief into fire and shattered an empire. Survivors on distant worlds told his story. Some called him a hero. Some called him a monster. But all agreed on one thing: he had changed the galaxy. And in the silence of the stars, Draven's final message echoed, left in transmissions across the ruins. Attack a healer, and you awaken a destroyer. Humanity will not forgive. Humanity will not forget.